Hello, everybody. We are back. I'm Tom Sosnoff. I'm here with Dylan Radigan. This is Truth or Skepticism. It's Wednesday. It must be 1 o'clock. I don't know.
I feel like Wednesdays are stacking up. I feel like it was just Wednesday yesterday. I feel like we just did this.
You know, I used to kind of run my life, Dylan, based on expiration, Friday expirations, and it was only quarterly. Sure. Then it became monthly, and so every month, you know, my whole life revolved around Expiration Friday, and now my life revolves around Truth or Skepticism Wednesday.
Me too. But I feel like there's some sort of time compression happening because the Wednesdays are really stacking up.
There's more Wednesdays than other days. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah,
I'm saying it seems like every day, as you said the other day, every day is Christmas.
Yeah, every day is Wednesday.
Right around now, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. No, every day is Christmas was going to be the name of I'm not sure what, but
it's a good name for something.
It's a good name.
You know, I like your hypothesis of no vacation ever because work is vacation.
Well, that would be, yeah. That's where we're leaning with this whole thing. But
again, it sounds like some sort of like oppressive owner who's looking to exploit labor. But I don't think that that's where it's coming from. I think it's like work is that the work and that the convergence of that work and pleasure are the same action.
Yeah, that's fine.
Vacation implies that you need to escape from your work.
You know, there's a crazy lot of discussions, and I've been involved in them recently about everything, not work-life balance so much as just, you know, work efficiency and things like that. And I've been, I was talking with a buddy the other day who's an entrepreneur, and he's run companies with as many as 5,000 people, and now he's down to four or five, and he's so happy because he's like, this is what entrepreneurship should be. 5 people. He goes, I can build $1 billion company with 5 people, and he goes, and it's hard with 5,000. I've always kind of felt, you know, along those same lines, but I have my own twist to it. But anyway, so do you know what we're gonna?
What's your twist?
Well, my twist is a little different because I'm a little bit more of a kind of a capitalist. I'm a little bit more of like a revenue hound. So I always think there should be a certain amount of revenue per person, and if you exceed that, I mean, if you can't get to that number, then you're not building a good business. And I feel like that's
the revenue per human being.
Yeah, revenue per human being, right? And you don't ever need to be above that. Like, I can look at a business and I can go, well, if it's a startup, it's not fair. But if it's a mature business, I can look at that business and go, hey, you know what? This fits in my model. I've never heard anybody else talk about investing in a company where that works, you know? Mm-hmm. And but anyway, that's neither here nor there. You know, some people, I mean, I don't care if other people think that way or don't, whatever.
No, yeah, I understand.
But we have an interesting, our team of crack producers or crackheads, whatever you want to call them.
Or crackhead producers.
Or crackhead producers, that's right. Came up with a concept today, and they said, I'd like to see you guys cover what makes you here. Let me start over again. We built Tasty around the idea that fear is overpriced. And the one thing we like
present value of future fear.
That's the way you like to say it, right? So, and the cool thing about fear is that there's actually a market for fear. I mean, the VIX is a fear gauge. and it trades, and it's a penny wide. And so we have this incredible, liquid, massive liquid marketplace that trades 500,000 plus contracts per day, all based on fear. Super cool. So fear's tradable. That means it's quantifiable. But that's all market talk. What scares you and what scares me? Like obviously, because we believe that fear is overpriced, because it's very difficult to underprice fear. It's rarely in backwardation. So because fear is by definition, it has to trade overpriced. And in everywhere where you can monetize fear, it is overpriced. Insurance and markets, things like that. But what scares Dylan Radigan? What scares Tom Sosnoff? Like we're obviously not scared of being short some options or short some stock or short some futures or long some stock or long some futures, or not scared of making
or all alone in a foreign land.
Yeah.
Or without a job and with a big idea.
Yeah. All of the above. What is scary? What keeps you up at night?
I mean, am I going first or are you going first?
You could go first, because I'm having a hard time with this. And I know you're going to say, I know you, and you're going to say nothing. That's
No, I'm gonna. This is like improv. You have to agree to say yes, otherwise there's nothing to be done here. So saying I'm not afraid of anything is not an acceptable answer in a discussion like this. It's too easy.
Okay.
That's the buy-in I think that's required from both of us in order for this conversation to be successful.
All right, I'll give you that. Good.
So I would say fear. Fear generally comes from a sense of things you cannot risk, or things outside, the things you can't control, or events or situations outside of yourself that you cannot control. The most pervasive fear historically is the fear of death, I would say.
And you think that's outside of your control?
A death is generally partially in your control. Like you can control for heart attacks, you can control for some causes of death, you can control for crazy driving on a motorcycle, drunk driving, but you can't control for like a boulder off the side of the hill or something, a piano from the sky. Anyway, so I'd say fear of death is sort of the ultimate fear. And then that leads to fears of like fear of natural disaster, which implies fear of death, or fear of disease, which implies fear of, like, all these other are derivatives of fear of death, right? If it wasn't a fear of death, you wouldn't be afraid of a natural disaster, right? If there wasn't a fear of death, you wouldn't be afraid of the coronavirus.
It's weird. I'm not. I don't think of fear of death as I don't think of that. You think of that?
But do you? I don't think of it either. I'm just trying to analyze I guess I'm avoiding the question, truth be told, by doing some sort of intellectualization of fear, which is not what our crackhead production team has requested.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that doesn't scare me. I don't think fear of death actually scares a lot of people. I don't think that's it. So I mean, you can be scared of whatever you want. I just don't think that's.
Of course. All right. Listen, I don't like. I'm afraid of snakes.
Yeah, I can't count that either.
Spiders?
No, because those are too common. Those are like everybody.
Scorpion?
What?
How about a scorpion? Scorpion?
No, like you can't tell me drowning. None of that stuff. I don't.
All right, so so insects and sort of bizarre natural risk, sharks. Would you swim? Would you swim in the ocean in Northern California?
No.
Would you go out in like Bodega Bay where the sign says, "People have been bit by a great white shark recently. Swim at your own risk"?
Yeah. I mean, would I swim? No, but would that be something that I don't have to go in the water? You know, I'm not really here's
You're
the
not
thing.
compelled to swim anyway.
So okay, so I'm going to go clap back at something you just said. I don't think that that anybody should be scared of things that they can control. All right?
That they can control.
That they can control. So
Yeah, agreed.
So if I have a fear of sharks, I don't have to go in the water. Right.
So therefore, that's a fear that you can control.
Exactly. Exactly. And whether or not
If you have a fear of snakes, if you have a fear of snakes, you don't have to go hiking in the Burmese jungle.
Right. You stay out of you stay out of the places where there's snakes, pythons, or whatever it is. I don't particularly like snakes. I don't particularly hate snakes, but I live in the city of Chicago. There's no snakes. Okay.
It's a non-factor.
They're a non-factor. Okay. I live in Chicago. I don't have to worry about.
How about a mugging? How about a mugging? Are you afraid of getting mugged? Stick them up on the way.
I am not. And I'm not afraid of getting shot or mugged or anything like that. But I mean,
one of the urban risks.
Sure, they're urban risks,
but no fear.
No fear. So
I had a guy make a move on me in New York City for the first time ever last year.
What do you mean?
After living in Manhattan, like try to like intimidate, threaten, and rob me.
You got mugged?
Mugging. No, there was an attempted mugging.
Attempted mugging.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never had that happen, but I don't know what I would do in that situation. And I don't know. I mean, but you're not scared of that.
I'm not. I was shocked that it was even happening.
Right.
I didn't even realize what was happening until after it had happened.
Right.
I was so disconnected from reality.
So you were shocked, but you weren't scared. I got it. So what should we be fearful of? So I've been thinking about this all day because I've been bothered by this topic because as a risk taker, because I consider myself to be a risk taker, and on every level, like when you compare me to other risk takers, I feel like, I got this. This is what I do. I take risk. So I'm trying to think what am I scared of? Am I scared of failure? No, most risk takers are not scared of failure. We're used to failing. Am I scared of making a fool of myself? No, I mean, I'm used to making a fool of myself. So I've been troubled by this question all day. Like, what scares you? Because the things that I think I would be fearful of, there's no market for that. Like I can't trade it.
For example,
I'll give you an example. This is a tough one. Loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
Things you can't control.
Mm-hmm. I like that one. I have a fear of I have a fear I'll tell you. So here's one interesting thought on loneliness. Because loneliness implies a sense that you have no one, right? That you don't have anyone. You don't have a trusted friend, a trusted partner, a trusted
right. You can't control it. It's hard to control.
Right. But there's also the opposite of loneliness, which I think is equally scarier and maybe more scary, at least for me, which is the idea that no one has you.
Yeah. Isolation.
One thing, if you have no one, that's scary. But I would say it's even scarier to feel that no one has you.
Isolation. Same thing. In that same camp. And I think one of the things that we do, and one of the things that scares me about, and I think there was an article recently somebody sent to me, but I don't remember. I didn't get the whole thing because I didn't have a login. But one of the things that since the pandemic, one of the things that the current work environment of people, working from home and working from home or working remote, and it's a very different world, is that we have entered into an age of isolation. We are a very different society in 2024 than we were earlier. And this past weekend, I was having a discussion with somebody that, we talked about smaller working sizes, but at the same time, talked about, building companies that are 100% remote. And I don't get it. Like, I don't get the concept of, how can you actually create something in isolation? And how is there any satisfaction to that?
Well, but hang on, that's different than feeling like there's a personal fear of loneliness.
Yeah, sure. Personal fear of loneliness. Yes,
And
absolutely.
then there's a sort of, then there's an abstract fear of the general prevalence of loneliness.
Yeah, I'm trying to
So it's
tie it. I'm
interesting.
trying to tie it back to work. I'm trying to tie it back to business, and
Okay.
and then that's where we get into this kind of like, I was thinking about what scares me, and what scares me is that we're building essentially these faceless, these personality lists, that we're never going to turn back innovation and turn back technology, but in order for technology, specifically AI, to learn something, it needs it needs to learn from somebody. It needs a path. It can't all just be spitting back, a bunch of crazy facts that it's not going to spit back math equations. That's too boring. Then it's useless.
Mhm.
Then so,
Mhm.
where are we if companies have no personality? Like,
Thing where basically it's a combination of AI and remote work, and there's no longer the concept of the culture of the big wooden table in Chicago and free lunch and breaking people's chops and who's in town, or Bloomberg with their whole situation, or NBC. Whenever every company, I don't have to list the companies, but they all have a culture
yeah,
because there's a locus of activity.
would there be a cherry behind you if you worked for a faceless company, if you were isolated
I
working on
worked
your
for
own?
Goldman Sachs.
Right, or somebody else, and like, could you build Tasty Trade, if today? And the answer is, I don't think you could. I don't think you could in 2024 build Tasty.
Really?
I don't think you could, because I don't think you can do it. I've seen content firms that are 100% remote, and it's horrible.
You're saying where it's where like they're producing podcasts or they're producing whatever, like they're producing content, but without any cultural heart.
Yeah, I was listening to a radio show the other morning on sports radio on ESPN, and the three hosts were in different parts of the country, and they hadn't seen each other in 6 months or a year, whatever it was. They were talking about it, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. No wonder the show sucks.
Because there's no chemistry.
No, there's nothing. You don't know the person. There's nothing there. So the question is,
but you're saying loneliness is a risk to creative enterprise.
Isolation is, loneliness is, yeah. And I mean, if I fear anything, where we're heading business wise, is that we are going away from a direction that I thought was very collaborative and very it was very conducive to accelerated growth, and we're going into what to me feels like exactly the opposite, is an environment where you basically have to force it. You have to force things to make it happen. I don't know. It just feels to me like that's my one of my biggest fears and the biggest risks.
Is that isolation and loneliness will be the wooden stake through the heart of creativity?
Yeah. Creativity, innovation, collaboration. Yes.
culture.
culture. It's hard to create culture out of freaking thin
It's
air.
impossible. Well, it's interesting. As you know, I've been living half time in Italy for the last couple of years, which we need to organize some more tasty activity in Milan, by the way, because I think
We have a huge trading group in Milan, but
yeah, I think we need to get that fired up.
mhm.
But that is for a discussion for another day. But what you notice about, and this is, I'm sure, viewed as somewhat of a cliche, but what you notice about places like Italy, for sure, Spain, for sure, Italy, and also Ireland, I would say would be the three where it's the most obvious, where they have not abandoned the community as a that they view interacting with each other, including interacting with strangers that they don't know on a daily basis, as essential.
Yeah, yeah, and if you've read, if you read some of those, um, books on longevity and things like that, it's those are the places where people live the longest.
Yeah, I've been in Sardinia the past few days, which is this island off the coast in the Mediterranean,
Uh huh.
and it's become world famous for having more people that live over 100 than any place in. It's like one of the five so-called blue zones,
Yeah.
and it's not a blue. So I may just stay here and live forever. I may have to bring you over here so we can keep doing this for another 50 years. Um, another 50 years worth of Wednesdays. But for sure, it's not because they don't drink red wine, or it's not because they don't eat carbs, or it's not because they, go to spin class. It's because that there is constant interaction across the spectrum of all human beings at every day. There's not an isolation, and there's not they haven't bought into the idea that life is lived behind a screen. So it sounds like that one of your big fears is the transition to life behind screens,
Yeah.
a screen-based life,
Yeah. I mean, it
which makes
is.
sense as a former pit trader because you chose one of the most social. I mean, talk about an Italian parallel. Like the whole thing was, we're all going to go to this one physical location every single day and scream at each other.
Yeah. And then,
It is the most not, it's the most human it's Wall Street at its most human. It's not investment banking. You're not a lawyer for Sullivan and Cromwell. You're not a banker at Lazard Frere. You're a floor trader, like where it's entirely about a shoulder to shoulder experience, literally.
well, as our team has pointed out to me, another topic that I think is appropriate for 2024, that is fear based, is what about misinformation? Are you scared of misinformation? Because misinformation does bother me. I don't know if it's more that I'm bothered by it. I don't think I'm scared of it. I think I'm more bothered by it. But I am a little nervous about the fact that we've uncovered in this country an unwillingness to accept facts, or to be or to be too gullible to misinformation. And I think that I feels like it feels like we used to all be like, what are you, an idiot? And why would you ever believe this? To, oh my God, this is real. And I don't know if it's just because of, you know, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's more because of social media. I don't know if it's more because of certain people or candidates or things like that. But I don't know. I really don't know what drives it. But, I mean, we have entered an era of misinformation.
So I must have spent 5 or 10 years of my life both deeply afraid and gravely concerned and substantially disturbed all at the same time by bad information and um, basically two sets of rules. So there's one set of rules for one world, and then a different set of rules for another world. So you have two sets of rules, and then on top of two sets of rules, you have rampant misinformation, rampant disinformation, out of control. I would say that the single greatest risk to mankind, and I would agree with Elon Musk on this, is bad information. I exhausted myself on this topic, screaming at a screaming at a cable television camera, writing a book, writing thousands and tens of thousands of words. And what my final conclusion was that the people with the power to do anything about it are completely aware of the problem and they don't care. Meaning the president of the United States knows this, whoever the president is, the Speaker of the House knows this, doesn't care. Chairman of the Federal Reserve knows this, doesn't care. The Senate Majority Leader knows this, doesn't care. The Dow 30 CEOs know this, don't care.
What makes you think people don't care?
What?
What makes you think people don't care? And for some reason,
because there are things that some of those people, there are things that I'm not saying that Elon uniquely cares. And I'm not even, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to say that. But I would say the reason that I think that they don't care is because if they did really care, there are things that some of them could do to reduce it. There's very little that you and I can do to reduce mis or disinformation.
Yeah, there's a lot we can do. We can actually build a company around real information.
You could, but you would have to then. The issue is not building a company around real information. The issue is persuading an audience of customers that your information is real.
But that's
in a world where all the information masquerades as real.
But that's what we do. I mean, literally, that's what we do. We have entered into a space where there was, in the world of finance, there was an incredible amount of misinformation, because you get misinformation when people are uninformed or uneducated or just unclear. They just don't have the know-how to understand. So you end up in a sea of grifters and snake oil salesmen and everything else. If you come in and you present something that is very real, that is actually backed by math or whatever else, science, whatever you want to call it, you end up with, you actually change the entire space. And that's how you get rid of misinformation. So you can't take a step back and say these people don't care. They do care. I believe a lot of them really do care. The problem is that they are not building the kind of companies or taking the right steps to address that.
So you believe Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, is deeply concerned about disinformation?
I don't know. I would hope that he is, but I don't know that he is. And I would hope that if he is,
or that Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, is deeply. I'm just trying to think of the most power. Let's take the 100 most powerful men and women in America. Pick your list.
Sure.
Politicians, CEOs, sure. Billionaires, whatever.
Sure.
Of the 100 people on that list, which would obviously include Elon and Bezos, and then you would do Zuckerberg and whatever, sure. All the names, and some names we don't know, but whatever. What percentage of those people do you believe are deeply concerned about mis and disinformation? And why do you think they're not doing more about it? Or do you think they are doing something about it and I'm simply not aware of that?
I think it's the latter. I think that they are trying to do stuff about it, and you're simply not.
Are 99 of the 100 concerned with it? 50 of the 100? Like how deep has the fear penetrated the 100 most powerful people in the United States?
Unless you are an outlier, which can happen in politics, but really nowhere else. Unless you are an outlier, if you are one of the 100 richest people based on you
It's
know,
not even rich. It's just most powerful. Speaker of the House, President of the United States.
it's
It's not just
different
about
because
money.
I'm not going to give the president of the United States or the Speaker of the House. I don't think that's what we're talking about. Those people, I don't believe, have the
They
best
control the
interest.
biggest budget. They control the biggest budget in the history of the world, which is the U.S. That's more than richer than all of us by
I
proxy.
understand. A, they don't
But you're
deserve
saying
to.
you don't think that you don't think they're honest actors. So
No,
you're
I
saying
don't think they're
echo.
honest actors. I do not think they're honest actors at all. And I said you have to eliminate politics. But if you want to talk about the 100 most powerful people in business, yes, I do think that they have a vested interest in information being real. I do not think that misinformation is beneficial to them in any way. And the reason that they are as successful as they are is because people actually believe, and they're probably right, that they are not actors in the area of misinformation. I think when it comes to politics, that's very different. And I think politics is built, especially in the last, let's call it 10, 15 years, politics is built around a misinformation machine. And I think that's kind of sad and dangerous. But and I'm fearful of that. But I don't think that carries over to
Okay.
business.
Okay. So can I comment on that?
Sure.
So at a high level, I would say I like your direction. I appreciate your sentiment, and I think probably you're largely correct with one massive and catastrophic exception, which is that with the flipping, with the fact, because the media economy, whether it's New York Times readers, whether it's mainstream media, traditional eyeball accumulation, or whether it is social media, sort of post mainstream media eyeball accumulation, that all of the economic incentives for all of those organizations reward mis and disinformation, which starts out as extreme information and then migrates from extreme information and morphs into dis and misinformation. So the economic value of extreme information and then mis and disinformation is much higher than the value of generically true information, whatever that even may be. And so you have a component of the business community that has made a fortune, with Facebook being the most obvious, explicitly creating a global economy that that incentivizes you to monetize mis and disinformation. And that if you're really concerned, if there was really a fear of mis and disinformation, that there would be a massive correction, a massive penalty, basically, for all media or any media organization trading in extreme mis or disinformation. Which is why I say they know and they don't care. Because the money in mis, dis, and extreme information is so good. So much money.
Yeah, I know.
That's my cynicism.
Yeah, I know. I get it. I have to take the contrarian side and just disagree. I think that that's the easy answer. I don't think it's the right answer. I don't think
Really?
that I don't think that was the I think that is the very easy answer and easiest way to explain Facebook. I think one of the geniuses of Facebook was that they basically decided that they weren't going to interfere in the dissemination of information, just kind of like Twitter did originally and stuff like that. And they didn't really understand at the time, because they were very naive, and they had a very simplistic view of the world, and they didn't understand the implications of that and the risks in that, and the grift in that. But I don't think that any of it was intentional. And I just don't think so. And I think along the way they believed that it would be self-policed, almost a little like Reddit, but they didn't set up that kind of, you know, that kind of infrastructure. So I'm less I'm not
But don't you
really.
think they know now?
I do think they know now, and I think that there are, within reason, they tried to put certain limits in place. I don't know how great a job they've done, but obviously, based on the size of their market cap, whatever they do works. So it's very hard to say that the business model is a failure. And I don't think people buy buy stuff that they don't believe has integrity outside of politics. I believe people in the world of in the political world will do something where they actually don't believe in the integrity of the person, but they will do it for there's other factors that are involved. And so I believe in politics. That's one thing. It's a little that way in sports too, but I think in business it's not. And I find it. I just can't accept it. I don't think that's the issue. I know.
What
I
about
know
the
you're going to say I'm naive, but I'm not. I don't think I am.
I'm going to move on from it because I think it becomes circular and there's no real. It's all a matter of
Yeah, that's
opinion at
fine.
this
Okay,
point.
we can move on. Let's move on.
But where do you? But it doesn't. But there's an adjacent fear. However, it's not that far from what we're discussing, which is the fear of extreme concentration of wealth and power. The cliche is the Bilderberg, the Rothschild. There's that the world is run by 100 people, not just the
Yeah, I mean, do you believe that? Do you believe the world's run by George Soros and a bunch of other people? I mean, do you believe that's, you know,
I do not.
right? Either do I.
I
Do you believe that? I mean, do you believe that people think the markets are rigged?
The financial markets.
Yeah. Do you believe the financial
No.
markets are rigged?
Well, let me put it this way. I don't believe that the trading in any liquid security is manipulated or rigged. I don't think that Citadel's in there or the Sheik is in there. Although I personally did corner the silver market, but that I told everybody before I did that, and so that was out in the open. So that's different. But no, I do not believe that. Now I do believe that the U.S. currency and the U.S. Federal Reserve and the U.S. government manipulates the value of American debt and currency as they did in 8 and 9 and as they did in 2020 a second time. So there's a manipulation at the foundational level on the too big to fail and all that, but that's an entirely different discussion. But I don't think that's what you're asking me. Honestly, I think you're saying, do I think that, that it's rigged, that whatever, NVIDIA this or silver that or equities this or bonds that? No, I do not believe that.
Right. So I don't either. And I don't think that the markets are rigged or, set up or anybody knows anything else that somebody else doesn't know. And I don't believe any kind of a two-sided free market that exists anywhere. And so, but there are lots of people that do believe that.
Of course, well, those beliefs come from a sense of, I think, there's not an equality of opportunity in the United States.
I
This
mean,
is a fact.
do you believe that politics is rigged?
I know politics is rigged, but not in the way people think that it is. Politics is empirically rigged because they gerrymander the congressional districts such that it is only possible the total, like in a landslide year, like the Tea Party year or the Newt Gingrich year in 94 or whatever, the biggest blowout years were like, oh my God, the Democrats or the Republicans just swept the House. It's a total bloodbath, blah, blah, blah. The maximum number, and you're like, what percentage of all of the congressional seats changed in 2010 in the Obama backlash Tea Party year? And then you're like, oh, 6.5%. Or what percentage of the House of the seats changed after Newt Gingrich's contract with America in 1994 and the Clinton backlash? They're like, oh, 7%. And the reason that is because the vast majority of the congressional districts are rigged. Some for you, some for me, some for you, some for me. I ran for a congressional seat, as you know. You contributed to my campaign generously, which I much appreciate. And I can tell you that district, which is from a part of the country you're familiar with, is drawn. There's a line across the bottom of it. And then there's a little line across the bottom, and then it has like a little circle, like a little carve out, like a little puzzle piece is carved out of it, because that district is assigned to the Republican Party. And so they draw the line across, but then they carve out Saratoga, which is the one sort of Democratic stronghold in the district, because then the middle district is carved out for the Democrats, whoever the person is from Albany, Schenectady, whatever. That's a Democratic district. So first of all, it's rigged insofar as the two parties control all the congressional seats. Second of all, it's rigged insofar as if you're not a member of those two parties, you can't even get on the ballot. You don't even exist. So it's rigged insofar as you cannot participate unless you're a member of one of these two ridiculous political parties. And the two ridiculous political parties control all 93% of all the congressional districts, such that even in the biggest year, they don't really change hands.
Yeah, but you chose it.
Which was a learning experience for me to understand.
Okay,
how
then it's a
rigged it
learning
is.
experience, but you made that, you chose that, you made that decision.
You're asking me, you didn't ask me about, listen, if we're going to evaluate my personal decisions, there's a long list of critiques that could be offered. But has nothing to do with whether the American political system is rigged. It's obviously rigged. If you had ranked choice voting, if you didn't have gerrymandered districts so that you could actually vote for the people, and you didn't have to be a member of a political, if you had open candidacies, proportional representation, and ranked choice voting, then you would have a substantial de-rigging of the entire situation. But here, I want to leave you with a thought, because I want to leave you with something to be in favor of. And I say this in honor of your father. There's a tax rate in this country on capital. There's a tax rate in this country on labor. The tax on labor is much higher than the tax rate on capital. That scares me. I do not think it's a good idea to raise the tax on capital. But I do think it's a good idea to say that whatever the tax rate on capital is, 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever you want it to be, that the same tax rate on capital must be the same tax rate on labor. That you cannot tax labor at a higher rate than you tax capital. And then what would happen is you take all of the individuals who don't have lobbyists and don't have power, who just take W-2s working at Walmart or wherever else, and all of a sudden they benefit from all of the million-dollar lobbyists working for private equity firms and investment firms and hedge funds, lobbying for low capital gains and covered interest, or in carried interest. And so if you basically made a rule that said that you can't tax labor at a higher rate than capital, that would be one of the best things that you could do for America. And the fact that America taxes labor at a rate that's 2 or 3 times higher than it taxes capital scares the shit out of me. Because it means the country punishes human beings for working at a rate that is multiples of what it punishes people for investing, which makes no sense to me.
It's interesting. I mean, that's interesting discussion. That's a discussion for another day. That's interesting. I never presented it like that, but it's interesting.
Why are you taxing labor more than capital?
I got it. I understand.
What's the big deal? Tom Sosnoff wakes up every morning. He works his ass off. Shows up in Chicago. All these other people show up with Tom and they work. Tony shows up.
Yeah.
They all show
yeah.
up.
No, I understand.
Why do they have to pay higher taxes than the people that invested in financing Tasty Trade?
Yeah. No, I get it. It's really interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, no, I get it.
Not an excuse to raise, which, by the way, in my case, is not a reason to argue to raise capital gains. Rather, it's an argument to say whatever capital gains is, that's income tax.
They do that in some countries, just so you know, and it doesn't really work. But I have to think about why. Like, I want to say they do it.
Sure, sorry, go
I
ahead.
want to say they do it in Russia, but I don't think it works. I think it's like 14% on capital and salaries or something like that. 14, 18%, something like that, whatever it is. And I don't think it works. And they do it in other places too.
That might be causation correlation, because the fact that it's happening in Russia, nothing works in Russia,
Right?
Because there's no trust and no contract law.
But I have to think about this. That's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. That's interesting.
Well, fear not. There's another Wednesday right around the corner.
He's Dylan Radigan. I'm Tom Sosnoff. This is Truth or Skepticism. It's a tough topic today, but we fought through it. Fear. What are you scared of?
With some bushwhacking, but we got here.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, you know, because we're not.
I liked your loneliness. I thought the most compelling moment was the fear of loneliness, but then you took it to like creativity. I thought we were going to go into some deep emotional waters for a minute.
I'm not a deep emotional water guy. I kind of more wanted to tie it back to business, but yeah. Anyway, interesting stuff, Dylan. Thank you.
See you. I'll see you in an hour for overtime, actually.
Yeah, and then I'll see you next Wednesday. All right.
All right.
Ciao.